Hi Shady Grove, Pastor Denise here with your midweek update. Coming up on Saturday, April the 15th, is our Mission Benefit Golf Tournament. We need lots of people to come out and help encourage our teams as well as bid on some of the silent auction items. On Saturday, April the 22nd, you have a chance to give the gift of life. We are having a blood drive, and we need lots of folks to come out and support that. On Saturday, April the 29th, at the Colfax School, we'll be partnering with them to put on what is called Spring Fling. If you're interested in volunteering and we need lots of Shady Grove people, you can text 336-525-5870-SPRING and you can help to register for volunteering for that. Also coming up on April 23rd will be our church election, so you want to make sure and mark your calendars for that. Just wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you. It's after Easter now, and yet in the time of Jesus, for the disciples it was just the beginning. We read in the Gospels these eyewitness accounts of Jesus' interaction after his resurrection. In Matthew 28, 9 through 10, we read, "Suddenly Jesus met them. 'Greetings,' he said. They clasped his feet and worshiped him. 'Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me.'" Jesus later meets with the disciples and we read, "When they saw him, they worshiped, but some doubted." What? Some doubted? How can that be? He was right there before them. Why do we sometimes doubt, though, when we know all that Jesus has done in our own lives? Mark's account, the women are trembling and bewildered, and in 16:8 we read, "They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid." But obviously they did eventually go and tell the disciples. And in Luke, the disciples are sitting here listening to the women and thinking, they're crazy, they're talking nonsense, until Jesus appears before the disciples. And we read, they are startled and frightened, thinking he was a ghost. But he tells them to touch him. He's flesh and blood. And he even eats with them to show that ghosts don't eat food. In John's account in 2019, we read, "On the evening of the first day of the week, the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders. Jesus came and stood among them and said, 'Peace be with you.' After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw him." Later, Jesus helps them catch a bounty of fish, and he makes them breakfast, something very practical to help them believe. And then in Acts chapter 1, Luke again is writing about the accounts of the resurrected Jesus that was appearing to many, many people over a period of 40 days before he ascended back into heaven. After his suffering, he presented himself to them and gave them many convincing proofs that he was alive. And if it were not true, then why would these initially frightened disciples who were cowered down and locked in a room be emboldened suddenly to go out in public and proclaim that Jesus was the Messiah, even if it meant death as a martyr? And what does this all mean? Jesus' appearance to the disciples was to reassure them that all he said would happen. He's practical, he feeds them, he allows them to touch him. Whatever they needed to help them believe. And I think Jesus continues to do that today in practical matters as well as spiritual ones. He meets us at our point of need to make sure that we know he is who he says he is. And we have a story to tell like the disciples, our own conversion experience to share. We are frightened at times, just like the women and the disciples were. We worry what people will think of us. Are we crazy? Are we some sort of religious nut? The truth is on our side, and Jesus is with us as he promised to help us carry the message by the power of his Holy Spirit to others so that they too may have the peace with God that Jesus promises. Blessings this week, church.